Happy Thursday. It is time for Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. And we were up late last night because it was an epic night in Major League Baseball. We got a lot we're going to get to. We've got some great NBA expertise coming in. We're going to get into some previews of Thursday Night Football. We've got 2 stacked hours, but there is a ton of baseball on our minds, and we will start this show like we do every show, Caroline Fenton, with 3 points. What is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
Oh, it was such a great night in baseball. And mama, there goes that man. And by that man, I mean Cal Raleigh. And by Cal Raleigh, I mean the Big Dumper, the official mascot of Yahoo Sports Daily. And by Big Dumper, I mean your betting AL MVP favorite. Finally, it's about time. The Big Dumper smashed his 59th and then 60th home runs of the season last night. That just adds to his already historic and prolific resume that has been this season for Cal Raleigh. And it was so poetic that Cal Raleigh hit 59 and 60 last night, because with last night, the Mariners also clinched the AL West for the first time since 2001. And to add to the poetry, to the sentiment, to the feel good that was last night in Seattle, Cal Raleigh's first home run hit where only 7 Mariners have hit a home run before, and it hit just below the banners that honor all of Seattle's postseason birth. So maybe it was a little bit of a peek behind the curtain of what was to come for Seattle, clinching the division, and Cal Raleigh capping off a historic night for that franchise, for a historic night in it of himself. I understand that Aaron Judge and what he's done this season, he's led the league in batting average, that Aaron Judge has been unstoppable. Aaron Judge has had an electric and amazing season. Everything that I'm saying is not an anti-Aaron Judge sentiment. It's not an anti-Yankee sentiment, but this has been such a storybook year for a franchise that, frankly, we as a sports society don't really talk very much about, because there's not really much to talk about. That Cal Raleigh, it feels like, has not just been the mascot for this show, but has been the mascot for baseball fans everywhere. Cal Raleigh has not just had a historic season, but I think we've all kind of fallen in love with this Seattle Mariners team because of what the Big Dumper has done. He's rewritten the history books, and I think, Fitz, we're just lucky that we get to witness it.
We are 6 weeks into this show, and I'm no less uncomfortable with the number of times we say Big Dumper, but let's go Dumper. All right, I'm all in on the Dumpy McDumperson that has become this show early on. We will get back to Major League Baseball.
Big Dump King.
It was a historic night last night in MLB. But before we do that, I've got a point to get off my mind. I was taking a look at the football landscape this weekend, and there's a matchup you need to know about. The Browns and the Lions. Why do you need to know about it? Well, because there's some funny history in this one. The Browns are taking on the Lions, and I want you to pay attention to a couple of things. Number one, the point spread on this. As of right now, they're about a 9-point home favorite, and the over-under on this is low, right? So I'm trying to figure out, with a 44.5 over-under and a 9-point spread, you're actually hearing Vegas respect the defense. They're telling you that this is going to be like a 27-17 sort of game. That kind of feels like a low number against this Lions offense, but if you're looking at the Browns, you're trying to find some way that you have hope. And the answer is history won't help you. In fact, I'll credit our great producer, Mike Goldfarb, for helping me find this. The worst records on the road in all of the NFL against particular teams. The Browns at the Lions, you see it there, 1-10. They haven't won in Detroit since 1983. I don't think Caroline Fenton's parents had even met in 1983. That's how long ago it was, and it's the only
That's correct.
ever had in Denver. Thank you so much. More fun facts about that game. Brian Sipe was the star of that game, I guess. I may be saying that wrong. 273 yards, leading the Browns to a 31-26 victory in September of 83. That performance made him Cleveland's all-time leader in touchdown passes at the time, with 135. That's how long it has been. 1-10 is absolutely abysmal, and I'm sorry, Browns fans, it's not likely to get better this week. In fact, if you were watching last Thursday, a week ago today, I told you why the Browns might be a thirst trap game for the Packers. Turns out, boom, I was right. Problem is, that doesn't happen twice in a row. Like the sales pitch to the Lions coaching staff just got so easy on don't overlook the Browns, because all you got to do is put in the tape from last Sunday. And the minute you do that, you're reminded that, hey, this defense can make things problematic, and we got to be locked in with our tremendous focus. The Lions are going to roll here, unfortunately, for Cleveland fans everywhere. So all I can tell you, Cleveland fans, is that the Browns may not be good this weekend, but maybe the Guardians will be. And that brings us to our biggest point of the day. You like that segue. I should do this professionally. Cleveland has taken first place, sole possession of first place in the AL Central after what can only be called an epic collapse, maybe the most epic collapse in sports history, definitely the biggest collapse we have ever seen in Major League Baseball history. It is unbelievable that we are watching Cleveland overtake Detroit right now in front of our very eyes, Caroline.
I mean, when you think about the most epic choke jobs in sports history, the first thing that comes to my mind is 28-3, right? That's
all
really
you have to do is say
28-3.
You can walk into a bar and just say 28-3, and then just in Atlanta, just walk into a Starbucks and say 28-3 and walk out. You're right.
Everybody knows what you're talking about. Like, it has become just such a joke across sports. And obviously that wasn't a Super Bowl. The stakes were high. The Warriors blowing a 3-1 lead in the NBA Finals. Like, that's a championship is on the line. So I do think when a championship is on the line, and yes, a championship is on the line here, but we're not in the World Series. It's a ticket to get into the dance, or it's at least a ticket to win the division. So I think that when a championship is directly on the line, then I think that's just on a different level, but in a different caliber. But I also think there is something to be said about a slow burn. And that's exactly what the Tigers have been experiencing. I mean, right around July 4th, the Tigers had a 15.5 game lead in the division. What I think is even more impactful, though, Fitz, less than a month ago, August 23rd, the Tigers had a 12.5 game lead. Had a 12.5 game lead a month ago. How in the world does that happen? So it's just been like a slow kill, and the Tigers fans, unfortunately, have just had to watch the most horrific horror movie on replay every single night for the last 2 months. So when we talk about epic collapses, no, this isn't in a championship series, but Detroit has had so many opportunities to right their wrongs, to get back to winning ways. Over the last 2 months, the Tigers have had an opportunity to figure things out, and they haven't. I mean, I just talked about how we have the privilege of witnessing history in Seattle with what Cal Raleigh is doing. We're also witnessing history in Detroit, but on the wrong side of history.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're right. I think what makes this meltdown even worse is that it's taken place over long, extended amounts of time. But I do want to congratulate in this process, because we love to compliment the good on this show also. The Cleveland Guardians had to get hot to take advantage of it. So as much as we're talking about the meltdown, let's acknowledge we saw some other results in baseball last night that could have opened the door, and nobody walked through that door. So you got to credit the Guardians for getting hot at the same time that the Tigers got themselves cold. Let's talk about some of those other races that we're looking at right now. The NL West became more crystal clear. The Dodgers win in extra innings. The Padres losing. The distance now 2.5 games. I just want to say, we've tried to make this dramatic all the way through. The magic number is 1. The Dodgers won the World Series last year, as we all know, for me being a lifelong diehard 3-month Dodger fan. I watched the World Series about a week after I decided I was going to be a Dodgers fan. They've managed to get through this season without any sort of letdown from what that was. I feel like we're sort of doing to the Dodgers what we do to LeBron. We're just normalizing greatness. They have the best player in the sport, and they're going to come back, and they're going to get right back to the World Series. I'm not oversimplifying, but Caroline, I'm oversimplifying.
Yeah, I think last night, maybe before this game, which was a great game, by the way, extra innings, Dodgers end up taking it against Arizona. But even going into last night, now the Dodgers have a much more comfortable lead in the division. But going into that game when it was much closer, I still didn't really have any sort of doubt that the Dodgers were going to be able to pull this out and win the division. And look, I say that with all the love in my heart for the Padres. I love Fernando Tatis Jr., and I think Petco Park is one of the more underrated venues in Major League Baseball. I love the Padres, but it's the Dodgers. They're a wagon. They have one of the best, if not the best players in the sport in Shohei Ohtani, that even when they blow some leads like they did over the last couple of games before last night, I still have so much trust in the Dodgers. The Dodgers are a wagon. And, I wish that this was a closer race. I wish that this was a more intriguing conversation today, but we got plenty more close races to get into, though, Fitzy.
Yeah, the AL wildcard race. Right now, Boston is there. They've got the first one. But we talked about Detroit and their free fall. The problem is the Astros can't do a damn thing to take advantage of it. I talked about not being able to walk through the door when it's open. You would think that the Astros could do that. But no, they keep losing games too. You're talking about the Tigers and the Astros. You're talking about putting an ice box in the playoffs. Whichever one of these teams makes it is going to be cold, cold, cold. I've got my money on Detroit, though. We've seen enough. I keep believing there's going to be this moment where Detroit is just in the quicksand, and at the last moment, boom, like a horror movie, the hand pops out, and they dig themselves out of all of this. So I've got Detroit still finding a way to hang on and make the playoffs somehow.
I have to go with the Astros. I do. I just think that if the Tigers have suffered such a collapse like this, an absolute historic epic collapse, what would lead me to believe that they can dig themselves out of it? And yes, the Astros are on a losing streak as well. They've lost their last 5. It's not nearly as close to the collapse that the Tigers have experienced over the last month and some change. So I'll put my money on the Astros, but man, oh man, if the Tigers miss out on the postseason, we're going to be talking about this Tigers team that was the best story in the sport around June and July. We're going to be talking about this team for a long, long, long time. I think it's a poster child for what not to do.
Yeah, the NL wildcard is also dealing with teams that apparently just don't want to make the playoffs. They're like, no, we'd rather go play golf right now. We get the Mets and the Reds.
Diamondbacks,
we're all trying to figure out,
Reds.
where are you on
Take
this?
it. It's there for the taking.
For this show, we want the Mets. Like one of our great guys loves the Mets. So like we're Team Met on this show. But how do we feel about it?
I am not Team Met. Let me just state that for the record. I am born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and I am a diehard Cardinals fan. Never
I realize that.
No,
That's my bad. That's my fault.
Team Met, but I am Team Diamondback. I am marrying into a Diamondback family. So you know what? I will ride or die for the Snakes.
You know what? I'm Team Reds. I love Cincinnati. Cincinnati's one of my favorite cities to hang out in. Kings Island is an elite theme park. I'm just saying. The Hard Rock Casino downtown, right across from the stadium. I have spent some time in Cincinnati, y'all, and it is a great city. So I'm now Team Reds. So we're representing each of these. No matter which happens on this show, we will be set and ready to go. That is the one thing that we know. We will keep you updated on all of the action, including Aaron Judge having a wildly big night last night that the history books will remember. We'll get into all of that throughout the course of the show. But as we know, every single Thursday, it feels like we get more information on the Clippers. As we try and break down what's next for the Clippers, we will talk to our buddy Tom Haberstroh next. We'll see what he thinks. He's got a crazy idea that he's written about at Yahoo Sports on a way that the Clippers could actually turn everything around right now. We'll tell you about it next. It feels good to feel good. I haven't felt like this since college. That is a direct quote of now Zion Williamson coming in. And I hate to say skinny Zion. I don't know how we want to frame this, but certainly Zion came into the podium, came into camp this year looking absolutely like a different human being. And we're joined now by Tom Haberstroh, host of The Big Number. Tom, you've got an article out there that I thought was really interesting about why the Clippers should trade for Zion Williamson now. Tell everyone, like, how did you even get to this conclusion?
Oh, it's all because of Joe Smith back in 2001. Remember, in the cap circumvention case with David Stern and the Minnesota Timberwolves back in 2001, the closest comp to what we're seeing with Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers right now. David Stern dropped the hammer and took 5 first-round picks from the Minnesota Timberwolves as punishment. And in the CBA, if the Clippers are found to be violating the rules around cap circumvention, Adam Silver can pull 5 first-round picks. Now, if you're Lawrence Frank, guys, and you're running this team, and there is potential that in a year's time or in 6 months' time, the league office, potentially, if they find you, guilty of violating league rules around cap circumvention, take your first-round picks. Can't trade them. They're gone. So, a little bit of what we call a prisoner's dilemma here, some game theory here, where Lawrence Frank is like, okay, I don't know if we're guilty or not. They're going to find us guilty or not of cap circumvention, but we have 2 first-round picks that we can trade right now. And so they have the 2030 and the 2032 available to be traded. And in a year's time, they could be gone. So if you're the Clippers and you see Fred VanVleet tearing his ACL and out for the season, that's one contender that has to takes a step back here. Do you take those first-round picks while you're under investigation from the league office for cap circumvention? Do you preempt all that and say, we're going to go out and hunt for a star that we can trade these 2 first-round picks and a couple swaps here and incentivize a team that might be wanting to trade one of their young players or one of their guys that maybe they've decided to part ways with? This is a situation that seems ripe for the picking in terms of Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans for a big reason. Joe Dumars is the new president of basketball operations for the New Orleans Pelicans. And typically what happens when you get a new GM or a head decision maker is they want to clean house and build this new team that they're taking over for in their own image and have their own guys. Zion Williamson is from a previous regime, and he is rebuilding this franchise. He traded the 2026 New Orleans Pelicans first-round pick unprotected to the Indiana Pacers that also could be swapped with the Milwaukee Bucks. It got widely panned across the industry. One way you can kind of refill your draft pick stock is to call up the Clippers and say, look, Zion Williamson, he's in great shape, but like going forward, we're going to build around Derek Queen, Jeremiah Friars. What we want to do is talk to you about those 2030 and 2032 first-round picks. Both teams, I could see a scenario where they're motivated to do this because the Clippers have an open slot at the power forward position, and who knows what happens with those picks going forward. You might want to smoke them if you got them.
Look, I think that is brilliant, 100%, because you can't get picks taken away that you do not have. But walk me through maybe the league office and how they would approach this trade. What is their jurisdiction on maybe holding the Clippers picks in purgatory until they get to the end of this investigation? Because it does seem kind of obvious. Okay, you're trading away the picks so they can't be taken from you, right?
Hey, I'm getting an all-star in Zion Williamson. You can't tell me I can't trade for Zion Williamson. He's one of the bright faces of the league, and you're telling me I can't trade for that guy? There are basketball reasons why you want to trade for a guy who, over the last 3 years, is averaging 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. There's not too many guys in the league that can give you that type of production. So there's another part of this, besides the basketball part. Adam Silver went out on the record last week in an interview on a panel and said, look, I have to treat this that they're innocent until proven guilty. And so can you imagine if Adam Silver out here is saying there's going to be a high burden of proof that they have to meet in order to see them as being guilty of cap circumvention, and then go ahead and say in the other side of his mouth, hey, we're going to freeze all your assets so that you can't trade or upgrade your roster to win a championship right now. That to me is very hypocritical and contradictory statements if he were to freeze these assets. And you can imagine every other owner would not like that precedent of the league office can freeze your assets if you're under investigation. So the league is kind of caught here. They can't necessarily freeze those picks because that is guilty until proven innocent. And this isn't the court of law. This isn't an FBI investigation into the Clippers, right? So the rules are at the hands of Adam Silver. And he went out and said on the panel, look, I am treating them as they're innocent until proven guilty, and freezing their picks would be in direct conflict of that statement. So if I'm Lawrence Frank and Steve Ballmer and the organization, I feel like I can trade those picks and upgrade my roster right now to go all in on winning a championship this season, guys.
Okay, so best case scenario would be the Clippers trade for Zion. They win a championship. Everybody holds hands and walks off into the sunset. What's worst case scenario if they trade those picks and then later are found guilty?
Yeah, so I guess what Adam Silver would do is take the next 5 picks. Or again, if they are found guilty here, if they are found to be in violation of cap circumvention, we just have to put those caveats here because Lawrence Frank might be operating that they're clean, that we have nothing to worry about. Those picks, we're not in danger of losing those picks and having a time-sensitive asset like that. He might be operating on the complete opposite side of this and say, look, we're going to keep those picks long-term, but we want to go get Zion Williamson. There's 2 other players I named in that article, Michael Porter Jr. with the Brooklyn Nets and Brandon Ingram with the Toronto Raptors coming home, so to speak, back to LA where he started his career with the Lakers. Those are 2 other guys that fit into a salary slot that would work with John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic's contracts with the Clippers. Salary matching works for those 3 players, but there are other guys out there that could come over to the Clippers, and it's not like Adam Silver can suspend or void the contract of those players that they get for those picks, right? It's not something that they can do. I know Adam Silver said he had broad powers in this case, but to suspend or void a contract in a secondary transaction that had nothing to do with Kawhi Leonard, I don't think they would have powers to void the contract. But in terms of maybe aggravating the league office by trading those picks, I guess you can make an argument that Adam Silver would look at that and say, hey, I originally was going to do 5 first-round picks, so 2033 all the way to 2037, but now because you traded those picks, that's poor form. I'm going to tack on another first-round pick or 2. And let's be real. If you studied the Joe Smith case, you know David Stern came down hard with 5 first-round picks as a penalty, but later, because of good behavior, they gave back 2 first-round picks of those 5, so really the penalty was 3 first-round picks. So I can understand the argument that you would not want to annoy the league office here, but also, if you are innocent, then you have nothing to worry about here, Caroline.
It's so interesting to me, Tom, because as I read your article, I kept thinking about the fact that Ballmer was smart enough, if he's guilty, to have been trying to circumvent the cap, and he's a very rich individual, and rich individuals are good at figuring out their way around certain situations. So all of this, the way you stacked it, I'm all in. So now give me this. I'm putting Zion on the Clippers. I've decided that you are now the truth seeker. This is the way it's going to happen. Zion Clippers equals what?
A real good shot at winning a championship. Now look at the Zion Williamson power drives that he has into the paint and sprays for 3-point shooters. You need guys that are able to hit threes around you to kind of open up that paint, because Ivica Zubac, he's a defensive player of the year candidate annually, a good young player in his prime, but he's not a 3-point shooter, not a spacer. But you do have Brook Lopez fits. So when you're looking at guys who can fit next to Zion Williamson as a guy who's not a 3-point spacer, a guy who's going to drive into the basket, you might want a stretch 5. Well, the Clippers already got one of the best stretch 5 rim protectors in the NBA in Brook Lopez. And so when you're looking at fit, Zion Williamson as a guy who's able to bring athleticism and foul drawing, and a guy who likes to spray to 3-point shooters. You got Bradley Beal, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, all 40% 3-point shooters off of catch and shoot threes. This is a great fit for the LA Clippers, getting a talent like Zion Williamson. And from the other side, the Pelicans are rebuilding here. They're a team that drafted very young. With their 2 first-round draft picks last year, they moved up to get Derek Queen, who's been injured since being drafted. This is a scenario where they could be bottoming out this season if they don't value winning these games this year. I could see them putting Zion Williamson on the trade block, who has 3 more years left onto his deal, and kind of clean slate for Joe Dumars is if he trades Zion Williamson to the Clippers, then he can focus on the future and rebuilding around Trey Murphy and Derek Queen.
So Zion has been the subject of trade rumors for a while, as has Giannis. And the latest in that, when he spoke with a Greek news outlet, he said, quote, "I hope that getting traded out of Milwaukee never happens, but I'm expecting it to. Just because you've given a lot to the team doesn't mean the team won't do what's best for itself." What did you take away from what Giannis had to say there?
Man, Luka Doncic really changed the NBA. Like, that trade changed everything. I think Giannis doesn't say this unless, he saw what happened to Luka Doncic with the Dallas Mavericks last year. I mean, that really opened up Pandora's box. You could be a 2-time MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Finals MVP, and still your team would trade you in your prime, because look at what happened with Dallas and Nico Harrison and Luka Doncic. So if you're Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're seeing around the league that star players, either by their own desires wanting to be traded or their team deciding to trade you. This is the new NBA. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a student of the league. He understands the league dynamics. Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Tyrese Halliburton, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yes, he wasn't an MVP candidate when the Clippers traded him, but all of these elite players in the league have been traded at one point in their career. And so Giannis Antetokounmpo is not just looking at precedent, he's also looking at 2027, in which he can be a free agent. And if the Milwaukee Bucks feel like he is not going to sign long-term, an extension before he can walk as a free agent, not this upcoming summer, but next summer, then I could see why Milwaukee Bucks would trade him before letting him walk for nothing. So I think he's smart enough to know that if Giannis is not seeing the kind of championship win now moves from the Milwaukee Bucks, that they might decide, you know what? It's better for us to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo before he walks in free agency in the summer of 27, in which the Clippers, by the way, and the Golden State Warriors, a lot of teams, the Lakers, are going to have a lot of cap space, and you can bet they are going to be eyeing Giannis Antetokounmpo to fill that cap space in the summer of 27. But the Milwaukee Bucks might not let him get there, in terms of they might trade him before it comes to that.
I guess, Tom, this is my difficulty. If I go back all the way back to 2018, when I first really got into this business, I'm sure you were one of the guests that we talked to about this on my radio show at the time. We've been talking about Giannis being traded for the Bucks for almost a decade. Like, this is an annual thing of like, well, Giannis is out. At some point, it feels like Boy Who Cried Wolf. Why is it different now than it's been in the past?
I mean, I think it's just the new NBA, the fact that trades are much more frequent in the league. When you're seeing that the new CBA is incentivizing teams to acquire players in trade rather than chasing them in free agency. You saw almost no free agency action this summer. Adam Silver has been asked about it, is that trades are the new free agency. The mid-season deals are the new free agency that we kind of grew up in, watching LeBron James hold court with 5 different teams in the summer of 2010 to see who he's going with. That's old. That's old news. I think Giannis now seeing that teams are more willing to put in assets and trade for guys like Kevin Durant, Luka Doncic. This is the new NBA. So yes, it is a boy cried wolf situation where we continue to hear, Giannis's name being thrown around. But this is different because the NBA is different. The new CBA is different. And the new precedent of Luka Doncic being traded, GMs now are looking at that and saying, okay, if they got Cooper Flagg at the end of this, all right, maybe it isn't so bad trading your superstar in the middle of their prime. I hope that for Milwaukee Bucks fans, they don't trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, but I do see an NBA executives are more open to this idea, and I do think that Giannis Antetokounmpo is a student of the league.
I know we got to get you out of here real quick. On the big number, you talked about the Rockets with their treasure trove of first-round picks. Why wouldn't they simply put together whatever it takes to get him?
Yeah, because they can't. A lot of their guys are trade restricted until December 15th. So when you look at Fred VanVleet, his contract can't be traded until December 15th. A lot of the guys on that roster, they can't be traded until the deadline or around the time of the deadline. Also, man, they're right up against the hard cap. They can't really make any moves in free agency. So this is a situation in which maybe Reed Shepard and some first round picks might be flaunted at the trade deadline. But for now, it's Amen Thompson and Reed Shepard playing that point guard position. But those Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, they might heat up if the Houston Rockets are really struggling to maintain those title contender aspirations. Sorry to use the word aspiration there in the context of the NBA now. But we'll see, guys. We'll see about Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, how they start, how Houston starts. It might get really interesting around the Houston Rockets and Giannis Antetokounmpo come the trade deadline. Not right now.
Go read the latest on Yahoo Sports from Tom. Obviously, you can watch him on the big number. Follow him on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days. Tom, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for hanging out with us.
You got it, guys.
All right.
Thanks, Tom.
Giannis talk to the NFL. It is a Thursday, and we have a Thursday night matchup that, well, you're going to watch, so we'll talk about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Tim Kawakami points out the NFC West is the only division with all four teams currently above 500, and two of its three cumulative losses are 49ers beating other division teams. NFC West teams are 7-1 out of division, with the Rams at Philly as the only loss. True dominance from the NFC West, and that gets us to Thursday Night Football, where we're going to have a big-time divisional matchup. And it is funny because this is what the NFL does better than anybody. The NFL makes random teams interesting. If we're being honest for a second, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports Daily, there is this moment for me where, look, I don't know what the every sport equivalent is of a Thursday Night Football game between the Cardinals and the Seahawks, but the fact is it's Thursday Night Football, it's Cardinals-Seahawks, it's a divisional matchup. We will all flock to watch it, and I'm trying to figure out
no pun intended.
Yeah.
Word pun.
What we did there? I'm trying to figure out what's real from these teams because the Seahawks are 2-1. The Cardinals are 2-1. And I don't think most fan bases across the league are scared of either of these teams, Caroline.
Yeah, the old adage in the NFL, what is it? You are what your record says you are. I don't think that's necessarily accurate when you're 3 weeks into the season. For some teams, yes, the Eagles, the Bills being undefeated 3-0, that is who those teams are, legitimate contenders and juggernauts in this league. I don't know if that's who the Seahawks and Cardinals are. Maybe it is. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not poo-pooing, all of the parties that might be happening on the West Coast with the bird teams. But I'm also not going to subscribe to the belief that that is exactly who these teams are. Because I think that through 3 weeks, you can see a couple of inspiring performances that you can hold on to and grasp onto. But I also remember how rough the Seahawks may have looked week one. And I can look at and pick apart the teams that the Cardinals have been able to beat through 3 weeks of this season. So I think tonight is a good litmus test of this division. Right now, the 49ers, undefeated. They're on top of the division. I don't necessarily buy into that, was just how injured that team is. I do look at the Rams probably as the class of the division right now, but can one of these two teams, either the Seahawks or the Cardinals, kind of emerge as that second or third best team in the division? Can one of these two teams emerge as a legitimate contender for a potential wild card spot in the playoffs?
Yeah, well, and look, to these fan bases, I would say right now, miss me with any conversation about disrespect from the national media. Your own fan bases are sitting there puckered up. Like, how many Seahawks fans right now, if they had to bet their house, on whether or not Seattle's going to make the playoffs, how many fans would be willing to do that? Not many. Same with the Cardinals.
Not in this NFC.
I mean, right? So to some level, when everybody comes back and says, respect my team, I think if you're being fair and balanced, you understand these teams have a lot to prove. So let's talk. We see two quarterbacks there. Yeah. Who do you trust more? When you start talking about in this matchup, just in general, which of these two quarterbacks do you have more trust for?
Darnold. And I don't feel great about that. It's not like I trust Sam Darnold more than any other quarterback in the NFL, but I've said it before. I will say it again over and over until I'm blue in the face. You don't win 14 games in the National Football League by accident. And I understand that Sam Darnold had KOC last year in Minnesota, and he had a glutton of weapons around him offensively. I understand that. But still, I think there's something to be said about a quarterback not messing things up. Kyler Murray, though, has not earned my trust. If we're going to talk about maybe the top 5 most inconsistent or top 5 least trustworthy quarterbacks in the National Football League, I think that Kyler Murray has to be in that conversation. So with those two, I have to go Sam Darnold. I think that he has been the face of consistency, at least in the regular season.
So here's the thing. Both of them, to me, get bit by interceptions. Like, just being real, both of them have turnover issues at times. For me, it's where do those turnovers come from? And sometimes it feels like Kyler Murray is just trying to do so much and then forces a ball that doesn't need to be forced.
He tries too hard to be Superman.
And that was who he was all the way back to college, right? Like, I mean, there are certain things that just stick with certain quarterbacks. And so for me, if I'm talking about trust, though, there are times like Kyler Murray will try too hard to make a play. Sam Darnold will just make a throw that you look at and you say, what in the hell are you doing? Like, what did you even see there as a throw? So for me, while I don't trust either of those, I trust Kyler Murray a little bit more. And part of it comes from where the mistakes are made. At least the mistakes are made in the attempt of trying to make a good play. Sam Darnold sometimes just forgets how to football, right? Like, that's the old adage there of just trying to figure out how to not turn the ball over. I don't trust Sam Darnold, at least yet, also because his tremendous success and turnaround still came with KOC. I got to see more of it before I believe that that's who Sam Darnold really is. So I think I trust Kyler Murray a little bit more. Which coach do you trust more? Because for me, it's McDonald 100%.
It's McDonald. I don't really even think that it's close. I would love to, on this show, on sports talk shows, that's what we do. We debate, we discuss, we argue. I don't know if I can come up with an argument for Jonathan Gannon, frankly. I don't know what would be there for me to say, like, here is a legitimate, argument for me to say that he is a more trustworthy head coach. I trust Mike Macdonald. What will he be in Seattle? How successful will this iteration of the Seahawks be? And how successful will his tenure with the Seahawks be? I don't know, but I trust him. And I know that he has a brilliant defensive mind. I trust him to come up with enough defensively to confuse Kyler Murray enough to give his team an advantage. No, he doesn't have a massive sample size of being at the helm in Seattle or being a head coach in this league, but I still trust him more than Jonathan Gannon.
I mean, I don't think it's even close. And I continually remind everybody, Ravens players said it took a couple of years to really learn that defense under Mike. Well, now what do we see in Seattle year 2? We're seeing just this defense is getting better and better. There's an identity. There's an identity to who the Seahawks are defensively, and I think there's an identity to who McDonald is as a head coach. I still don't really know what the identity, like if you walked in to a group of NFL fans right now and said, tell me in one sentence what the identity of the Arizona Cardinals is, I don't think there really is one yet. So as much as I believe, for example, Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon got their jobs at the same time, I understand what Steichen's doing, and I believe in what Steichen's doing. I don't really think that Gannon has had that moment where he's really put himself in there. So which team in your mind has a better shot at making the playoffs then? Is it going to be Seattle or is it going to be Arizona?
I think it's going to be Seattle. I mean, it would be disingenuous for me to say that I trust their coach more, that I trust their quarterback more. And look, and if we're going to compare these two teams outside of coach and quarterback, the two most important elements in football, I trust the Seahawks and I like the Seahawks weapons more. I'll take Jackson Smith and Jigba over Marvin Harrison Jr. from what we've seen from them in the National Football League. Like, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has all of the talent in the world. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. has a massive ceiling, but he hasn't come close to achieving that. Like, what is the biggest moment that we've seen from Marvin Harrison Jr. so far in the NFL? Nothing comes to mind. I see a pop off the page Jackson Smith and Jigba highlight really once every couple of weeks. So I will go Seahawks because I just have more trust in the powers that be, and I have more trust in the weapons around Sam Darnold. And I think Sam Darnold is that kind of quarterback, right? He might be a factor of what's around him. And there's a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL like that, but that's kind of the tier that I put Sam Darnold in. I think that he has a more healthy ecosystem around him.
All Sam Darnold has to do is manage the game. And to your point, he has JSN. He also has two great running backs, I think, that have the opportunity when healthy to be difference makers. They have a defense that I trust more. I think Kyler Murray's still in a situation where he has to lift up the Cardinals a little bit more, and I don't know that that's something that I trust that can happen. Plus, until proven otherwise, the Cardinals always sort of fall apart at the end of the season. I know Darnold does too, but there are other pieces to that Seahawks team that I believe in. So I definitely trust Seattle more. We're a big dumper show here, like as we've talked about repeatedly. And Seattle right now captivated by the Mariners. What would it take in your mind for the Seahawks to sort of become that level of darling to the city? Seattle loves their Seahawks. Don't at me. I know it. But like, it just feels like the whole world is watching the Mariners right now saying, oh my God, this is interesting. What would it take for Seattle to accomplish that?
Ooh, okay. So I would say the big dumper right now, 60 home runs. He has rewritten the history books. I would say the equivalent of that is Sam Darnold breaks Russell Wilson's single season passing touchdown record with 40. Sam Darnold has never gotten to that point. He threw for 35 last year in Minnesota. I think you would have to break Russell Wilson's record and maybe break it in fairly dramatic fashion. And the Seahawks would have to win the division. They'd have to win the division out over the 49ers, over the Rams. And the Seahawks, I think, would have to become one of the major storylines of the NFL. And that's not really like something that you can quantify. That's more of a qualitative data, if you will. But that's what the Mariners have become. One of the best stories, one of the stories you can't ignore in Major League Baseball. The Seahawks would have to match that.
Yeah, the big dumper has become such a phenomenon that the Mariners matter even for people that don't pay attention to baseball. I think the only way that happens for the Seahawks is an NFC Championship game appearance. It would take Sam Darnold getting this team to the NFC Championship game, and then everybody's in love with Seattle. Everybody's in love with the completion of the redemption story. It's like a Disney movie at that point, and everybody will rejoice. But I do know this, that the world always seems to love to root for the Seahawks, so I think that there's that element there. It's just a matter of how did they get there and when did they get there? So Thursday Night Football, we'll get you updated on the result tomorrow. Be sure to hang out with us at 9 a.m. right when the show starts. In the meantime, not Thursday Night Football, but one of the bigger names that we've all been paying attention to is Travis Hunter. The question is, are the Jags using him wrong? One Hall of Famer thinks that's the case. We'll tell you about it next. Deion Sanders doesn't think the Jags are using Travis Hunter enough. Quote, they're not using him enough. I've seen it with my own eyes on an everyday basis for 3 straight years, so I know what he's capable of. That's what Deion said on the New Heights podcast about Travis Hunter, who obviously came into the league with wild expectations, Caroline. Like, when you think about just massive expectations because of what he's capable of doing on both sides of the ball, all eyes have been on what it would mean for the Jags, who essentially, in the minds of some, were drafting 2 players for the price of 1. But I would caution, from day one, if you talk to actual smart football people, like if you talk to people that aren't just out making big hyperbolic statements, the conversation was always, it could take a little bit of time. They're going to have to figure out the right usage. Deion says they're not doing the right way. What do you think?
Well, if you just look at his numbers, Travis Hunter hasn't been overly impactful really on either side of the ball. He is the 1, 2, 3, 5th leading receiver for the Jags. 10 catches for 76 yards over 3 games. Like, that's not really anything that really wows you. And then defensively, Travis Hunter, I think, has 1 pass breakup and 9 total tackles, 6 of those solos. I mean, like, that's not nothing. And look, it's not to take away from the fact that Travis Hunter is playing both sides in the National Football League. Just that in and of itself is incredibly impressive. But playing both sides in the NFL is not the same as playing both sides in college football. Although it was wildly impressive, and Travis Hunter was very deserving of all of the Heisman votes and the Heisman trophy that he did get, honoring what he was doing on both sides of the ball. Like, this isn't the Big 12. This is the National Football League. So, yes, just based off of the stats and the numbers alone, he hasn't been overly impactful, and the Jags traded the farm to trade up and get him. So you would expect a return on your investment when you invest as much as the Jags did to get Travis Hunter. And also the other side of that is, I'll trust Deion because Deion did it. He said it right there. I did it for 3 years, and he was able to so expertly and so perfectly, it felt like, develop Travis Hunter on both sides of the ball, use him on both sides of the ball to the point that he was a high first-round draft pick and a Heisman Trophy winner. So, like, yes, on this, I defer to Deion. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to using Travis Hunter.
I struggle with this. Because I have so much respect for what Travis did in college and so much respect for how Coach Prime used him. And I think it was a brilliant marriage. But I also don't really think that most of us will be flocking to whatever Lane Kiffin has to say about the usage of Jackson Dart. And part of the reason we're going to do that, part of the reason we won't do that is because the NFL game is so different than the college game in so many ways. So, like, at some point, are we looking around to the college coaches of Marvin Harrison Jr. to ask why Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't become the wide receiver in the NFL that many thought he would be? It's just, this is hard for me. And the problem that I have
is different, though.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's different. You know, you can be an expert at developing a quarterback. We have so many of those in the NFL, whether it's Sean McVay as an offensive genius or KOC. Give him plenty of love on this show. Is there an expert on balancing a duo wide receiver corner in the NFL? No. Like,
but there's also,
if anyone is an expert at it, I would say it's Deion.
I would say that Deion is an expert at doing it. And Deion was an expert at developing it at the college level. How much does that translate? I mean, if college success translated to NFL success simply from what you do, then Tim Tebow would have been an epic quarterback, and he wasn't. And I know I'm going back to quarterbacks. I know it's a much different example. For me, I think that the approach has been wrong from day one. And I'll be honest about this. Like, I just think that when the Jags drafted him, what you needed to decide, not where he's going to play forever. You needed to decide, in my mind, in the beginning, where can he have the most success and growth in year one? And just commit to that one thing. Be great at one thing before you try to be great at 2. I know he wants to play at 2 positions, and I know he's deserving of the opportunity to play at 2 positions. I'm not saying he shouldn't get there. But when you think about the timing of it, you are drafted in April, and all of a sudden in May, you're figuring out, okay, what life looks like. You're learning a playbook. You're buying a house. You're doing all these things, and you're adjusting to what life as a professional athlete is like. And the number of guys I've talked to that in their rookie year will tell you, man, it's just all so different. From the team atmosphere to the coaching to the way players approach it, it's all so different. Why put all of that on him and then also put him in two positions at once? And this is something on Inside Coverage Joey Epstein talked about repeatedly, that you've got to think about the amount of time in meetings. How is he going to balance his time in, not just time on the field, but time in meetings? I know he says I have plenty of time to break down the film, but I guess my question is, why not focus on becoming great at one position and then add the other one in? That to me would have made more sense, because right now what you have is sort of a fraction of what Travis is capable of doing on offense and a fraction of what he's capable of doing on defense. And I don't know how you expect that to change if at any point you're splitting any of his attention on development at one particular task. I love the appeal of playing both ways. I just think that if you're going to play on both sides of the ball, it needs a very calculated long-term approach to do it.
I will agree 1000% with you on that. That needs to be the number one priority, is let's pick one side of the ball. And obviously we kind of all assumed with Liam Cohen being an offensive-minded head coach, it would be on the offensive side of the ball. But let's pick one side of the ball and get you really comfortable with that. Let's get you comfortable and acclimated to the NFL game before we throw the other side at you. And look, Travis Hunter will be the first one to say that it's a challenge that he would take on wholeheartedly and head on. And I think that's great. But that's also the job of a coaching staff, is to save a certain player from themselves and put them on the correct plan and path to the most success. That everybody said, oh, the Jags are brilliant. The Jags are getting 2-1 in Travis Hunter. Yes, that's true in a way. Are you getting 2-1, or are you getting half and half? Are you getting half a receiver, half of the production from a receiver, and half from a corner? Because at Colorado, it was 2-1. And I will agree with you. The college game is wildly different than the NFL, which is exactly why I would have taken a different approach in the NFL. Let Travis Hunter be a receiver first. Or if you think he's a better corner, if you think he's going to be more impactful for your game and for your team, make him a corner first. But doing the half and half and splitting of your time and splitting of the snaps, and him having to get up to speed in the NFL at two different positions, you're throwing too much at him. And that is coming from someone that has all of the respect in the world for Travis Hunter, from someone who has all of the belief that he can play both positions. But doing it right now, week 4 in your NFL career, throwing both at him, it does feel like too much. How much more impactful can he be becoming an expert at one position? I would say he will be much more impactful at one position than he is 50% at both.
But Caroline, I think this is also indicative of a bigger problem in sports media, and sports fandom right now. And the problem is the immediate expectation of return on investment is wild to me. We are 3 weeks into Travis Hunter's career, and somebody's trying to make an indictment of how he's being used already. Like, my God, we haven't even let the process start to play out. Like, we don't even know the identity yet of Liam Cohen, the head coach. We don't know the identity of what this offense is really going to blossom into. We know so little about who the Jags will be. And we are in such an immediate reaction society right now that we're doing this across the landscape. People want to make draftees a bust or a massive success after only weeks in the league. And I don't understand it. Like, I get that we spend so much time prepping for the draft and covering the draft and getting to the draft, and then we get so excited for the draft that the minute we draft somebody, we're like, oh, this is it. This is the franchise savior. This is going to be the toy that makes everything better. Like, I get that that's where we are, but that's not real. I keep saying this. We do not live in an Ozempic society in sports. You cannot simply take an injection and suddenly make everything go away. If you want to see your team get better, it takes time. It takes development. And we're not even giving rookies a month before we decide that the way they're being used is wrong. The worst thing that we could do now to Travis Hunter, in my opinion, is suddenly start changing the plan that we should have had from day one. You should have walked in day one with a plan, how you're going to execute it and how you are going to make him a great player while you make your team a great team. And that plan could take all year, but you got to let it cook. The fact that we are 3 weeks in and now we already have extra cooks in the kitchen, like, if I have barely even gotten my steaks marinated, I don't need you to stand over me and tell me how to grill them. And that's what's happening across the board with every single rookie. It's exhausting. How could we possibly, like, the real answer is not a single one of us knows a damn thing about any of these rookies that have played 3 weeks. It's got to stop. So, like, I hear I hear coach come in and say, I know how he should be used. I know how he should be developed. And to that, I would say, I appreciate your insight, but let's at least let the guys that have been paid millions of dollars for this organization to do that exact thing have a chance to do it. And we're not allowing that. It's disgusting to me. Guess what, y'all? We don't know if rookies are going to be great or they're going to be terrible. And we don't know that in 3 weeks. We won't know that in 8 weeks. Sometimes we won't even know that as we start season 2. And if you can ever accept that, man, the entire process of growth in the NFL would get so much easier for you to digest. I don't understand why after 3 weeks we even have an indictment on where Travis Hunter is.
Welcome to the NFL. People get hired and fired for the plans that they make and the decisions that they make. You don't always have ample time to figure out, do we really need a couple of more weeks to decide if we're doing the right thing? Do we need to really confirm and make sure that we're going down the wrong path? Time is of the essence in the National Football League. The shelf life of a coach can be that of a gallon of milk in the National Football League. So do you really need to marinate on your decisions?
For bad organizations. For bad organizations. Good organizations decide that Jordan Love's going to be the answer, whether any of us get it or not, and they let him work through the rust of the first half of the season, and they let him.
Quarterback development is different. I think quarterback, we have to throw everything that we know about developing young quarterbacks out the window when we apply that same kind of thought process to Travis Hunter. Because I'm with you that we need to take time to develop quarterbacks, that maybe there is a quarterback development problem happening and it's a trickle-up effect. We're having a quarterback development problem in college football, or having a quarterback development problem in the National Football League. And I think that's why there's such a massive gap between the elite of the elite in the league and then the Kirk Cousins of the league. No offense to Kirk Cousins. But if you're looking at Travis Hunter and what you invested into Travis Hunter, and you can see why is he not making a larger impact for our football team? Yes, it's through 3 weeks, but we can all see it. At some point, you do have to walk back and adjust, because you talk about the plan. Everybody's got a plan until they get smacked in the mouth. At some point, you have to make those adjustments, because the development of Travis Hunter and the impact of Travis Hunter, I think, is at the core of the future of this football team, obviously along with Trevor Lawrence.
But if you get smacked in the mouth and you change everything suddenly, your plan sucked and you weren't deserving of being there in the first place. All right, we'll keep breaking down all the NFL action. And, of course, it's a massive weekend in college football. USC shocking the world. Will it continue? We'll break it down. Welcome back to hour number 2 of a Thursday edition of Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. We've got another racked and stacked hour with tons to get to, but we will start this hour as we start every hour with 3 points. Caroline Fenton, what is on your mind, my friend?
News updates.
We're going global because the Vikings and the Steelers are headed to Dublin this weekend for a nice little overseas matchup. And Ben Roethlisberger, of course, Steelers' great former Steelers quarterback, was on the Footballin' podcast, and he said the following, quote, "If I say that I think we're going to get outcoached, is that controversial? I'll say this. I think Brian Flores is a very good defensive coordinator. Of course, defensive coordinator for the Vikings. I think Coach Kevin O'Connell is an exceptional offensive mind. They're going to find ways to try and exploit our defense and their defense, which is what everyone does. I get it. I just think that there's a chance that it could." So he's basically saying, without mincing words, not basically, he is very much so flat out saying he thinks that the Steelers will get out-coached by the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin. And I know that this will send Steelers Twitter ablaze. I know that there are probably so many people out there saying, how in the world could Big Ben say this about his team? To that I say, does anybody disagree? At this point where Mike Tomlin is with the Pittsburgh Steelers organization and what KOC has done in Minnesota, does anybody disagree that KOC has the potential, or maybe put some money down on KOC out coaching Mike Tomlin? Look, I think Mike Tomlin is a Hall of Famer. He will be in Canton one day. I think that Mike Tomlin should be one of the most respected head coaches in the National Football League. But let's be honest, what we've seen from the Steelers, at least through 3 weeks, hadn't been overly pretty. Let's be honest, sometimes, although it's a great voice, sometimes voices get stale. Maybe things in Pittsburgh are just getting stale with Mike Tomlin. Don't let me tell you. Let Ben Roethlisberger tell you. Somebody who knows the coachings and the teachings of Mike Tomlin very well. So I know it sounds crazy, and I know he even said it. It's controversial for him to say that about his former head coach. But let's just take a step back and look at where the Pittsburgh Steelers are right now with Mike Tomlin and ask yourself, do you disagree that KOC will and could outcoach Mike Tomlin? And of course, Ben Roethlisberger went on to call the Steelers defense vanilla. Again, I don't disagree. Don't be mad at Big Ben just because he's speaking the truth.
Oh, if anything, Big Ben's out there firing up the fan base that is already screaming these things. It's not a great time to be a Steelers fan. Even when they win, it still feels like they're angry at everything. I'll get you my first point. Speaking of winning and losing, when you lose, they come for you. And that's just a fact. And they are coming for Bill Belichick in every possible way. But here's the thing. He's bringing it on himself. This is the cover of Us Weekly. Now, for those of you that don't love pop culture as much as I do, Us Weekly is essentially a gossip magazine out there that did an article about Jordan Hudson, his girlfriend, his much younger girlfriend, as we've covered many times. And I think the jarring part of that is seeing Bill on the cover of a pop culture magazine in the middle of football. The fact is, the man who has always screamed about distractions, the man that famously told everybody in the locker room never be a distraction, that didn't allow people around the organization that he felt was distractions while he was running the New England Patriots, that man has become the distraction. He has created the distraction. He is the distraction. And that's the most jarring part of what we're seeing for Bill Belichick. In fact, there are now reports of a new lawsuit alleging that the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and their board of trustees hid their negotiations from everybody as they talked to Bill Belichick. So even in the process of getting to North Carolina, Belichick was in fact creating what would inevitably become a distraction. Now, if you win a lot of football games, everybody loves you. When you are on top of the mountain, the quirks that make you interesting are part of what everybody accepts as part of covering you. So Belichick can be mean to reporters and it gets laughed off. Belichick can be sort of just a gnarly person and it gets laughed off. Everybody talks about it as something that's jovial, right? There's nothing jovial about what we're seeing now. Why? Because North Carolina football is bad. And because North Carolina football is at this point embarrassing themselves. But more important than that, it feels like Bill is embarrassing himself. The result on the field is no longer worth the squeeze. The juice isn't getting you what you expect out of it, and we're very early in this process. Somebody tell me what's going to fix it. If your answer is the transfer portal, well, that's how North Carolina tried to fix their roster, and supposedly they were going to get the best players in the world. That didn't happen. So now when they don't win, it's because we don't have enough talent. But that's the very talent that Belichick and the people that Belichick chose to bring in, like Mike Lombardi, to run the organization, have essentially been incapable of identifying the appropriate talent to make the team what it should be. Every single element of what is making Bill Belichick's life complicated today is Bill Belichick's fault. And that's why, as I always say, the phrase perception is reality isn't enough. You have to start to accept that perception is reality because you helped create that very perception. Everything that Bill is dealing with today, a bad football team, magazine covers that make people talk about everything other than football, a lawsuit about his contract, these are all things that Bill was part of creating. So whatever his personal hell looks like right now as he tries how to figure out how to turn this North Carolina football team around, whatever that looks like is the fault of one man. It's the fault of Bill Belichick. And North Carolina is going to have ripple ramifications for this for several years to come. The only way that this ever stops is if North Carolina becomes one of the top programs in the country. So I ask you, North Carolina fans, college football geniuses around the world, what's actually going to make that happen? I think if we all look honestly, the answer is nothing. And knowing that the answer is nothing, it tells us that the only thing we're going to remember of this era isn't the football that happened on the field. It's the embarrassment that happened on the sidelines. All right, let's get to our top point. Our top point, college football happening all over the landscape, including, I don't know. I don't want to be condescending here, but that's kind of like when you say no offense, but like it actually means a little offense. Like, hey, USC, I almost called them South Carolina. USC they're actually good. Like Carolina, we spent some years collectively screaming about Lincoln Riley. He's got a top 25 football team. USC's number 21 in the country. They're 4-0. They're taking on number 23 Illinois that needs a big bounce back. But, like, let's take a second tip of the cap. Like, USC's, they're ranked.
Because that's exactly why USC paid Lincoln Riley $100 million and bought out his contract at Oklahoma and bought him a cushy little pad in the hills, was to be a top 25 team, right? Wrong. No. I mean, look, that's great. It is great that USC is now a ranked team. I'm not taking anything away from that, but this team and this program has much higher aspirations than being a top 25 team. Look, and you get credit for doing what you are supposed to do. And USC absolutely gets credit for taking care of business with every team so far on their schedule. But when USC brought in Lincoln Riley and paid him all of that money and invested as much money as they have into their roster, we were talking college football playoff and we were talking championships, right? Those are the expectations. And now Lincoln Riley is in his 4th season at USC. And what does he have to show for it? Let's put up or shut up time. The Lincoln Riley needs to start winning some things at USC. Now, they have. They are 4-0. And that's great. But before we talk about USC being a legitimate college football playoff contender, which is the expectation, it should be the expectation at USC, let me see USC do it against a legitimate team. But USC will play Michigan. USC will play Notre Dame. USC will play Oregon at some point on their schedule. And of course, they play Illinois upcoming this weekend. Beat some of those teams. Be competitive against those teams. It's great and lovely to beat Missouri State. Go Bears. It's lovely to beat Purdue and Michigan State. It's probably the bottom of the barrel in the Big Ten. That's great. You took care of business. You did what you're supposed to do. Wipe your hands of it and move on. Do it against a legitimate team and a legitimate contender in your conference.
Yeah, and look, by the way, let's not get it twisted. Notre Dame needs USC to go on a run. I think this is an important part of their schedule. Like, Notre Dame has nothing left on their college football schedule that will really cement the mindset of the College Football Playoff Committee about who they've played, and they've lost to the only 2 really good teams that they've played this year. They need USC to go on a run, because if USC goes on a run and wins all these other ranked games and USC ends up being a number 15 team in the country, it becomes a quality win. And we talk about this all the time. Quality wins, quality losses. Notre Dame's got the dreaded 2 now, quality losses and 0 quality wins. Their only shot at getting a quality win this year is USC. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you are sitting back there right now and your whole as against this as it feels, because it's a huge rival. You're making your whole man cave into USC. Like, it's all like, hey, I need the Trojans to win over and over and over again. And I think they can. I think they can win this game against Illinois, Caroline. But, like, I think your point on who they played is an important one. I don't think we've actually seen that USC is particularly good yet. They've just won some football games. And I do believe there's an element of AP voters that see USC win a game, and they just put a number next to their name.
I do think we, though, need to give credit to Jaden Mayava, what he's doing, the quarterback at USC, because, yes, I'm with you that, like, you need to do it against legitimate teams. Like, what you have been doing, great. Like, that, there's nothing wrong with that, but keep doing it and do it against higher-level opponents. But Jaden Mayava, I think, is somebody to keep an eye on as a potential Heisman dark horse. If USC continues to win, and if USC racks up some of these big caliber wins, if they beat Notre Dame, if they beat Illinois this weekend, if they're able to take down Oregon later in the season, Jaden Mayava is a guy that we need to keep an eye on. So far, he's completing 71% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, and 0 picks. Like, he is kind of on the same trajectory as Caleb Williams in his USC Heisman Trophy season. So someone to keep an eye on there. But as far as this matchup goes, Fitzy, I'm giving Jaden Mayava and USC all of their flowers. Who takes this one? The Trojans, USC, who have been quietly kind of climbing up the AP poll leaderboard, or Illinois, who just got that butt whooped by an epic proportion by Indiana?
Yeah, no, I've got USC in this game, and part of it is because of what Cignetti did last week, right? Cignetti basically went out there and gave everybody else the blueprint to just pick up. Now, Lincoln Riley has not had the success at USC that we thought he would have, but he's still a great offensive mind for a reason, right? So he goes back at almost like a video game and looks at some of that and says, okay, we're going to run some of that. And Mayava is a great comp for you. To your point, I think he can go out and have a lot of success. So I think USC is going to be able to throw the football on Illinois just like Indiana did. USC wins. Who you got?
Give me a bounce back game for Illinois. I didn't think Illinois was a top 10 team, but I also think that Illinois still is a very good team. Illinois just does everything right. They don't do anything fancy. They don't do anything sexy, but they don't turn the ball over. They don't commit stupid penalties. They don't shoot themselves in the foot. Now, USC has been very good at taking care of the football and has been very good at stopping the run. So maybe this is, the recipe for disaster for Illinois, but Lincoln Riley talked about how they played the latest kickoff in college football last week, and now will play the earliest in college football this week. Wah, Crimea River, don't join the Big Ten if you don't want to play those kinds of kickoffs. But I do think that there is something to be said there, a level of exhaustion and a level of revenge maybe for Illinois that could be the difference here in this one.
Yeah, you took the money for the Big Ten. You don't get to complain about it now, Lincoln. All right. I mentioned Notre Dame.
Crimea River.
Yeah, Notre Dame's going to take on Arkansas. This is not going to be a game, right? Notre Dame's going to roll all over Arkansas.
Yeah, I think that you would be correct that Notre Dame is going to roll all over Arkansas. This is such a funky, weird, kind of week 4 matchup. I love it, though. Arkansas just got embarrassed by Memphis at the Liberty Bowl last week. That I think that Taylon Green, their quarterback, he's a roller coaster, and buckle up for the experience, because there's going to be times where Taylon Green looks unstoppable. He's like a Johnny Manziel ability to extend plays and to go off script, but that giveth and that taketh away. The Taylon Green can throw some of the most mind-numbingly stupid interceptions, and you're like, why are you doing that? What are you doing? I also think Arkansas is going to get run over by this Notre Dame team, whether it's CJ Carr, whether it's Jeremiah Love at the running back position, or whether it's Jadarian Price at the running back position as well. That's one of the best 1-2 punches at the running back position, I think, in college football. I mean, Arkansas gave up almost 300 rushing yards to Memphis last week. Almost 300 rushing yards. I think Notre Dame's going to roll.
Yeah, I mean, when you are getting your butt kicked on both lines of scrimmage, you're going to lose. And that's very simple. Notre Dame will beat Arkansas on both lines of scrimmage. You're right, they're running the ball everywhere. And I just appreciate Arkansas not toying with us for half the season before we give up on them. We can give up on them early in the year. That's kind of them to not waste our time. Sam Pittman and that Arkansas team is just, they're in for a butt whooping this weekend. All right, well, let's get one more in. Texas A&M and Auburn. I want you to talk me into this because, I walked into this thinking Texas A&M is going to roll in this one, but not so fast, my friend, says Caroline Fenton. Talk me into it. How's Auburn win this game?
So, everybody thinks there's no way Auburn could beat Texas A&M. They beat them last year. And that was a way worse Auburn team last year. So let's not get that twisted. Now, this game is in College Station. That's an overwhelming advantage for Texas A&M. If you've never been to a game at Kyle Field, put it on your calendar because it's something that you have to do. It is one of the loudest and craziest environments in all of college football. But so much of what Texas A&M wants to do offensively is run the football, whether it's with Le'Veon Moss or whether it's with Marcel Reed, their quarterback. And that's so much of, Marcel Reed's game is what he does with his legs. Don't look now, but Auburn has the best rush defense in the SEC. That Auburn was able to largely stifle Baylor's run game in week 1. They were able to limit a lot of what Oklahoma did on the ground last week, even in a losing effort. But that was a very close football game. And Auburn fans were telling you they were a couple of questionable ref calls away from taking down Oklahoma last week. So there's absolutely a path. And I think the path is if Auburn is able to stuff A&M's run game and force Marcel Reed to throw them to a victory, well, I think that's an Auburn win right there.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I have trust issues with so many things in my life, but I really have trust issues with Marcel Reed having to throw the football here. I agree with that. I have a hard time thinking that they're going to be able to stop the run. I do, but your point is a good one. I was wrong on, and I'll say this pretty loud. I thought Auburn was going to get boat raced last week. I watched, and you didn't, and you were right. I watched that game, and I thought, man, this game was a hell of a lot better and a hell of a lot closer than I thought it would be. To me, it's just the home. There's something about having to go to College Station that just feels suffocating. It feels suffocating for anybody to go into that environment, but particularly as I say all the time now, it's like, don't take a shot every time I say it, but the game's won in the margins. There's such a margin. These two teams, I think, are pretty even. If we were on a neutral field, I would feel much different about this. If it was at Auburn, I would feel much different about this. I just think the ability to control adrenaline early on, it just feels like the sort of game that Auburn gets down early and they have to scratch and claw their way back, and I don't trust their offense to be able to do that. So I will go Texas. Are you officially picking Auburn? Just officially picking Auburn?
I'm going to do it. Auburn's going to go into College Station. They're going to beat Texas A&M.
No, man, that's spicy. I'm taking A&M. All right. From college football, where, frankly, you'd have to be a robot to be able to handle the emotion that happens in every college football game, to actual robots in baseball. Well, sort of. We'll tell you about it next. Yahoo Sports Daily. Yahoo Sports tweets out, breaking! MLB will implement the automated ball strike challenge system in 2026 after the league's competition committee approved robot umpiring. Human umpires will call every pitch, while teams can appeal 2 calls per game to ABS. We got robot umps. Not really robot umps. We have human umps, but we have essentially robotic opportunity to take a look at these calls afterwards. So, again, it's 2 calls per game. Caroline, I love this. I want to loudly scream this from the mountaintops. I would love to live in a world where there wasn't a single human involved in umpiring or officiating a single thing in all of sports. Just so that every person that hits my menchies constantly, especially in college football, the NFL, baseball, it's everywhere. Every time they're like, the refs had it out for me. Oh, the umps bias. I just want to shut that noise up. Like, I want every person that has decided that the umps are at fault for everything to just no longer have a voice. So give me robots for every single pitch, not just for the reviews.
I love this. I don't love it for every single pitch. You still need an umpire, Fitzy. Let's not go full Back to the Future
get one of those
mode
like umps
in
like
Major
we
League
see on
Baseball.
Twitter all the time that are running and doing box jumps. Like, it could be an animated ump that's like, it's still giving you the symbol. Okay.
That's
Okay,
worse. That's way worse. Like an animatronic ump. I do think I love this. I think the one way that the MLB has steered itself wrong is calling them robo umps. Because I have talked to many, many people, whether I'm on the radio, people calling in, or, just people. And they're saying, well, I don't want to see a robot behind home plate. And I'm like, no, that's not what it's going to be. And I think that the name of it, calling them robo-umps, has led a lot of people to believe that there's going to be R2-D2 back there behind home plate. That's not what it is. But I do love this, that this is probably way overdue in Major League Baseball. And this is coming from somebody who has detested every single change in MLB, whether it's the pitch clock. I hated the pitch clock. I hated the idea of that. I thought, all of you, new Major League Baseball fans, you can't sit in the stands for 6.5 hours and watch a game whenever the pitcher's on the mound, just going through, spitting on his hands and adjusting his hat and adjusting his pants and adjusting his socks. I'm like, you can't do that. And then they implemented the pitch clock, and I'm like, wait, this is great. Like, the games are quicker, the games are more efficient. Like, let's get this over with. So I want to push back as somebody who loves the sanctity of baseball and who has been a diehard baseball fan ever since I can remember. I want to hold on to, the old school style of the game. But I also realize that some of these new changes just make the game better, and they're bringing it into the 21st century. So I do love this, that we don't need a game to be decided by a bad ump call. That if we can find a way to make these calls as perfect as possible, at least in a review system, I'm here for that. And I think that baseball fans should be here for that.
I have loved every one of the changes you mentioned. And as a regular minor league baseball attendee in the Connecticut area, like going to Hartford Yard Goat games all the time, I love the speed of the game. I love the pace of the game. Like, I just genuinely love being in a ballpark. I always have. For me, it makes the viewing experience so much more fun. I want the robots in every possible way because I figure, why give myself as opposed to some things that are a judgment call. And there are certain things in sports that are judgment calls that I think you need a human element for. Right now, a ball and a strike is not a judgment call. Like, there is a particular zone. It's either in that zone or it is not in that zone. Like, there is no judgment call to me. So if I can have, to your point, yes, it's not an actual robot. But if you give me R2-D2 and C3PO standing behind home plate, looking at each other, and strike, ball, I'm in for every single. In fact, I think they're telling me we have an image from the future of what this actually looks like. So we have our eyes on it. Look at that. See? And we've done the right thing here.
No.
You've got a robot standing. Yes,
way.
I'm in for all of this. This is beautiful.
Robo-ump is the rump.
And every time he calls, instead of just hand movements, every time he calls a strike, he could shake his rear end, like kind of twerk. So then it'd be like rump shaker. I'm in on this, like rump and dump. By the way, that's a new buddy.
Robo-ump, just shorten it to rump.
Yeah,
I love
robo-umps. This is
rump and the dump. Cal Raleigh,
is
the big dumper, standing right there with the robo-ump. The rumper and the dumper.
This is maybe some
work.
of the finest work that Doug has done on the show, because we now have a robot ump that looks like he's straight out of Short Circuit. It is perfectly done. I know nobody wants, I say nobody. I know there's a group of people that don't want robots taking over sports. But the only thing that I would caution, because like I said
it's
earlier,
not a robot.
Yeah, it's not a robot. It's a computer. The only thing I would caution is I think that Major League Baseball still needs to understand that when you automate anything, there will be people that believe that you are fixing a game. So they're going to have to be transparent, even with computers, about why it was viewed, where it was viewed. Otherwise, there's going to be a whole new group of conspiracy theorists on Twitter X. They're going to be like, well, the league just wanted the Yankees to win, so they made sure that the rumps called everything balls and strikes the Yankees' way. Like, that's the inevitability. The rump is the perfect name.
But don't people believe that already?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
isn't it so much easier to believe that there is human bias versus computer bias?
Look, I don't know, but if we make fun of the rumps, is it a rump roast? I'll keep going on this all day. Look,
keep
one
going.
thing we can, thank you.
Let him cook.
I'll keep thinking of more. In the meantime, while we're talking about Major League Baseball, last night was an epic day for the sport, okay? Because we had the big dumper. We already talked about that. Had his night mashing home runs. But Kyle Schwarber hits 55 and 56. Aaron Judge hits 50 and 51, all in one night. Like, you've got multiple home runs from just absolute huge names in the sport. I was watching the games while I had Twitter X open, as so many of us do. And it was funny to see, as Aaron Judge was going off, to see my Twitter timeline suddenly blast off with Aaron Judge is the MVP, no question. And then you get to the Mariners portion of the night, and it's like, nope, Raleigh is the MVP, no question. I think last night might be one of the more exciting nights in Major League Baseball that I can remember, Caroline.
Can I say it? Baseball is back, baby. We are back. There was a moment there when I didn't know if baseball was going to be back. There was a minute there where I think we were all a little fearful that baseball was at a point of no return with the level of interest and the style of play and the pace of the game. But over the last few years, with those changes that we mentioned, whether it be the pitch clock or a universal DH, why was anybody against that in the first place? Like what? We don't need to see pitchers hit. All of these changes have made the game so much more interesting. The way that I think the players have marketed themselves, that has become a game where we fall in love with the individuals, that it is now so much easier to appeal to the masses, not just the baseball diehards. And then we have games and nights like we had last night in Major League Baseball, where the stars, the Aaron Judges of the world, hit his 51st home run of the season, and Cal Raleigh hitting his 59th and 60th, the unsung hero, the unsuspecting, face of the league in the big dumper, continuing to do big dumper things. Those are the kind of nights in baseball where there's absolute chaos. The Dodgers win in extra innings, and the Diamondbacks and the Reds just can't seem to take care of business. When these wild card races are heating up, divisional races are heating up, and we could come down to the final day of the season and still not have a perfect picture or idea of what the postseason is going to look like. Like, nights like that in baseball just make you fall in love with this game. And I thought last night was the perfect example that baseball is not just in a very healthy place. Baseball's back.
Yeah, and for everybody that screamed over the last few years about every change, from playoff expansion to change within the game, I constantly yelled, these changes aren't for the diehards. It's to bring in more new fans. You're seeing the actual result from that right now, and it's all working. All right, we're going to keep working on everything going on across the course of the weekend, including what Jackson Dart means for the Giants from a betting standpoint. Ben Fawkes going to join the show next. The Cleveland Guardians had 100-1 odds to win the AL Central at some books in July. They're currently a minus 225 favorite at BetMGM. An absolute incredible run. That from Ben Fawkes, who we're going to talk to right now as we take a look at some of the context behind the collapse of the Guardians, trying to make it all make sense on Yahoo Sports Daily. Ben, thanks for the time. Give me some guidance here. Like when you think about the collapse that we've seen here, give me some context on where this falls amongst some of the other big moments in sports.
Yeah, I think it's always interesting, right? With sports betting, you can compare essentially the money lines, the probability of an event happening across different sports, whether it's soccer, whether it's tennis, whether it's basketball, football. And this Guardian, certainly we should say, that tweet was from the night before, right? They won last night. They're minus 700 now, which is roughly an implied probability of about 87%, right? For them to now win the division. Back when they were 100-1, that's an implied probability of 1%. And sports books also aren't going to offer necessarily what we would call the true odds or the true probability of the Guardians coming back from 15 and a half games back in early July. So it really should be even longer than that. So roughly under 1%, right? To now they're 87.5%. And across sports, we've seen this previously with some things as long as like Leicester City, right? 5,000-1 to win. But a couple others recently, the first 16 seed in college basketball, UMBC, that was about 25-1 when they beat Virginia back in 2018. Saudi Arabia, a couple years ago in the World Cup, beating Argentina, also 25-1 on the money line. Again, the true odds should be a little longer than that. And the Guardians right there, 100-1. So they had a little better odds than even Brian Harman, who I don't think anyone outside of Brian Harman's family probably knew he was playing in the 2023 British Open. He ends up winning. And even this year, JJ Spawn, 150-1 odds to win the 2025 US Open. So an absolutely remarkable run. Again, about 1%, less than 1%, we would have the probability based off of those odds. And I think it's even lower than that, right? Because it takes two to tango. And regardless of if the Guardians had won 17 of 19 games, it would be irrelevant if the Tigers just were under 500, around 500. They've also been in the tank. So a remarkable comeback, and also remarkable because the Tigers did this to my Twins last year. They were the ones chasing the team to make the playoffs. So they've now been in both positions, obviously worked out a little better for them last year.
I just love sports. Like, where else in life does something like this happen? It's been such a fun and incredible run to watch the Guardians do what they're doing. Not so fun watching what the Tigers have been doing. But we're talking about long shots. Let's talk about some other long shots. John Mateer, the quarterback at Oklahoma, it was announced earlier this week that he'll be out for the next month-ish. He's undergoing hand surgery on his throwing hand. John Mateer, after this past week, was one of the Heisman favorites, depending on whatever book you're looking at, but had some of the best odds to win the Heisman Trophy. With the news of his injury, whose odds have been the beneficiary for Heisman odds?
Yeah, so raise your hand if you thought an Indiana quarterback would be the Heisman favorite as we enter week 5. But that's where we are. Fernando Mendoza was plus 900. He was the second choice. He's moved up to plus 650 as the favorite at BetMGM. Mateer dropped from 7-1 down to 22-1. And obviously a lot of that depends on when he actually comes back, how he looks, etc. But Mendoza was 55-1 entering the season. That's what he opened at preseason. That's what he entered week 1 in. So a huge boost for him, certainly. And it's been absolutely wild Heisman race, right? I can't remember a year where this is week 5 and this is either the 5th or 6th favorite, different favorite that we've had in this market. We had Arch Manning, we had Garrett Nussmeier, we had Mateer. I believe Mateer was tied. We also had LSU quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. So it's just been one player after another, Carson Beck, going back and forth. And it's going to be an absolutely wild race. And even this, Mendoza as the favorite, he's only plus 650. And you have Dante Moore second at over 10-1. I believe he's 12-1 odds. So it's completely wide open right now. And it's rare we have kind of a race in that market that's that wide open through week 5. Usually somebody has established themselves as kind of the favorite early on.
So walk me through that for a second, Ben, because I'm not talking about a pizza bet. There's a difference between I got my couch cushion money and I'm just throwing a bet down on a Heisman. for sharps and people that do this professionally in general, is there any approach that's the right approach to the Heisman, given how many variables there are during the course of the year with things like injury?
So I think it's a little bit like Survivor, right, in the NFL, where you kind of want to plot out the season and you know the peaks and valleys for teams and some of those inflection points, right? So you might see, for example, Dante Moore, if you got him a couple weeks ago, because maybe they're playing weaker teams, you have better odds. And now, depending on how you think that Oregon-Penn State game is going to go, well, maybe now is the time to buy him at 12-1 because he's going to put up a giant performance and his odds are going to get much better. And in the same way, I think you'd look at a Fernando Mendoza or another long shot, a Josh Hoover, right? And say, hey, we saw this maybe in one game. If this continues and then he plays well in some of the bigger games, that's the big thing, especially with the Heisman. You really have to, one, put up big stats, two, be on a winning team, and three, have some media narrative around you, which generally means you have at least one, primetime game, if not a couple, so that a national audience can have exposure. And it's why there is also some East Coast bias, right? It's more difficult sometimes for some of those players on the West Coast in those late games, if it's not a primetime game, to get the same exposure. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I just can't remember it being this wide open and, so many opportunities. Garrett Nussmeier, potentially a number one pick, first round pick next year, 15-1, right? So if you said before the season you could get Garrett Nussmeier to win the Heisman in week 5 at 15-1 odds, I think people would probably take that, especially considering they beat Clemson week 1 in their big game.
Fernando Mendoza also getting number 1 overall pick buzz. Good year to be Indiana.
Good year to be Fernando.
Good year to be Fernando, too. Speaking of the NFL, we've got a battle of the 1 and 2 heavyweights in the AFC, Ravens and Chiefs. The Ravens are 2.5-point favorites, but the Chiefs are once again an underdog at home. That doesn't happen very frequently, but it's not the second time that has happened. So this season, what do you make of this spread?
Yeah, really, really interesting game. And, obviously barring a tie, one of these teams is going to be 1-3. I think for the Chiefs, that's a little more concerning than necessarily the Ravens. The Ravens are still plus 550 to win the Super Bowl. They're right behind the Bills, even with that loss to the Lions. Again, one of the better perceived teams in the NFL. And the Ravens are really 1-2 in just about all odds makers' power ratings, despite the fact that they're 1-2. The Chiefs still further down. Chiefs are 14-1 to win the Super Bowl. This game is open Ravens -3 at some books. Really, Ravens -2.5 is what it's held. What's interesting is that when this line opened back in May at sportsbooks, this was Chiefs -1.5 originally. So a big move kind of from there based off of how the teams have played so far this season and how they've looked. And then obviously just the Chiefs kind of, that was a meandering victory, I guess I would say, over the Giants. Russell Wilson throwing the ball away on 4th and goal. It didn't inspire a ton of confidence. They did get the job done. They covered the spread. They won the game. They move on to the next. But this is a big-time game. If anything, it almost seems like this line is a little cheap, right, on the Ravens. But there has been sharp action at Chiefs +3. And that is kind of the resistance point. So I think this line's going to be roughly in that Ravens -2.5, Ravens -2, somewhere in there. It's probably not going to get to 3 or past 3. But a really interesting game with two, premier teams. And I think the Chiefs really need this game, even a little more than the Ravens, just because the Ravens' schedule is not that difficult with, a couple games against the Bengals with a backup quarterback, the Browns, and some other games. There's a big, big game, especially for the Chiefs.
Loser falls to 1-3. So how's Vegas treating the Super Bowl futures for these teams?
Yeah, the Ravens, I think they're still going to command that respect, right? And they are viewed as one of the top teams. And with that schedule, they're just not going to bump them that far down. Now, obviously, if they go to 1-5 or something and it looks like they're in danger of missing the playoffs, that's a different story. The Chiefs are 14-1, which for the Chiefs is pretty low for them. But I think they also have, what one odds maker called the Mahomes tax, right? It just, you can only bump them down so far before people are going to bet them almost no matter what. If you said that the Chiefs have wide receivers coming back and it's week 6 and they're 30-1, and let's just say they're 2-4 or something, you're still going to buy that just because of the track record that Patrick Mahomes, in his career as a starter, the worst he's ever done is make the AFC Championship game. So until you see something different, there is certainly a track record to buy on that. So odds makers are wary of lowering the Chiefs too much. Obviously, if they lose this game, they'll get bumped down a bit, but it's really some of those upcoming games where we'll see those Super Bowl odds shift, I think, on the Chiefs, depending on how they do.
Sticking on that graphic for just a minute, we see several 3-0 teams with high Super Bowl odds. You look at the Bills, you look at the 49ers, they're at plus 1,600, the Chargers at plus 1,500. But there are some other undefeated teams and 3-0 teams that are not represented there. Tampa Bay, Indianapolis. What more do those teams have to do? Or maybe what more do the sports books have to see from those teams to start giving them, some legitimate Super Bowl buzz?
Yeah, I think the Niners are interesting just because we talked about before the season, right? They had the easiest schedule by opposing season win totals, and they're now 3-0. Obviously, they have injuries, Brock Purdy, Joey Bosa out for the season. They seem like a prime potential trade candidate, right, to get another pass rusher in there in Robert Saleh's defense. I think they're probably going to be just fine. I think the Bucs are an interesting team. All that they do is win, right? That's seemingly all that they do. Make the playoffs, make potentially the divisional round and win the NFC South. I think it just hasn't been necessarily as impressive. They obviously have some injuries. Tristan Wirfs, now Mike Evans out for a little bit. And just the way that they've been winning some of those games, I think probably hasn't been as convincing. But again, they're right there. And the Colts, it's a little bit same with Daniel Jones, right? Where we've seen this movie a little bit before. And they also really should have lost that Broncos game. So if you're looking at them at 2-1, despite how good that offense has looked, defense has obviously played well. I think there's still a little more of let's wait and see with them and how do they look, by week 8, by week 10, et cetera. Now, they certainly have a good lead in the division. Texans have not looked good. They potentially look like a playoff team, but we're only through 3 weeks. It's a long NFL season. So I think that that's why they haven't risen as much. They're certainly one of the early season surprises. But remember, through 2 weeks last year, the Saints also were putting up 40 points a game. So long season can change, pump the brakes a little bit, but it's been an amazing start and not one that a lot of people saw.
All right, so let's get to Jackson Dart quick before we get you out of here. Jackson Dart, the new starter for the Giants. What impact has that had from Vegas' eyes?
Yeah, this was Chargers at the Giants, basically LA Chargers -6. This moved to -6.5. So really only half a point difference between Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, which I think tells you, one, how little respect there is in the market for Russell Wilson, and then two, how much hope there is, for Jackson Dart. I think this is not probably enough of a move. The public is all over the Chargers, as you would expect, with kind of 70% of the bets, 80+% of the money at multiple sports books on them to cover. We just don't know that much about Jackson Dart. And I think that we saw, right, with J.J. McCarthy in his kind of rookie start in week 1, a lot of the issues were just play calling, right? Getting the play in, delay of game penalties, things moving too quickly. Even with Russell Wilson, if he's throwing the ball 3 yards down the field and it's a lot of checkdowns, it's still at least a higher floor. And so I think Jackson Dart probably has the higher ceiling, but he also has the lower floor. It'll be really interesting to see how he goes. And he also has a brutal schedule they're tossing him into, starting with the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's already up there for the Offensive Rookie of the Year award is staggering to me. Ben, appreciate your time as always, my friend. Thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you next week. Thanks for all your insights, brother.
Anytime.
Ben Fawkes giving us God's truth on what we expect from Jackson Dart. We'll see how that plays out for the Giants over the weekend. Coming up, it's Thursday. If you're thirsty, Thirst Trap's coming up next. Oh, that GIF can mean only one thing. It is pronounced GIF, by the way. It's Thirst Trap Thursdays on Yahoo Sports Daily. You guys know the deal. Be careful. Don't get get caught sipping on some water there. We each identify one game that's going to be a thirst trap game. That's the game you stay away. I will tell you, if you're new to this, all right, we've done this twice. This is our third week. Each week, we've given you a game that has been correct. So I don't want to say we're on a roll, but I want to say we're on a roll. So, Caroline, we each pick one, and we'll take a little bit of a victory lap. I will go first this week, and I will take a stunning game to many. The Titans at the Texans as a thirst trap game, and that means most importantly that we get to see D'Amico as a thirst trap is spectacular there.
I will say, our wonderful producer Doug will do this every week, and we'll put kind of pudgy coaches with some abs as thirst traps. That fits. D'Amico Ryan's his actual body probably does look like that.
The first thing I thought when I saw the picture was the exact same thing. I was like, he didn't even have to Photoshop that.
He didn't Photoshop this.
That's just what D'Amico. Maybe my favorite reason we do this segment is because I get to see all of this and it motivates me to go to the gym afterwards and make sure that I work extra hard. So thirst trap D'Amico Ryans. Why is this a trap game against the Titans? Well, number one, the Texans are a big favorite. There is no doubt about that. But number two, think about this. The Titans have just taken play calling away from head coach Brian Callahan, and they've given it to Bo Hardegree. Everything that could possibly go wrong for the Titans so far this year has. But even through that process, they've been competitive in some of these games, sneakily competitive in some of these games. The Titans are not a good football team, but the Texans are sitting here, and I know the Texans are 0-3. How can you be 0-3 and possibly have a trap game? Well, it's because the Titans are just that bad, and it looks like it's an abject disaster. So, Caroline, I get it that when you've got two 0-3 teams, it's tough. But if you're the Texans, man, I don't know. I'm looking around thinking, okay, if I'm the Texans, this is my get-right game, and I have the Ravens next week. I'm looking ahead to Baltimore a little bit. I feel like there's a possibility that they're just looking at it saying, it's the Titans. The Titans are an absolute dumpster fire. We're going to roll here, and I don't think it's that easy.
I don't know, Fitzy.
Okay.
I see the wheels turning, and I see it there that Bo Hardegree takes over play calling duties, and I think that's the right move. But how much can he really do? This Titans team is so bad. They are so bad, and it makes sense. You look at the roster, and it's like, yeah, I can totally see how this team's not very good. With the Texans, however, I look at the talent they have on that team, and I have to ask myself, why are they so bad? Why are they 0-3 with C.J. Stroud and Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson and that defense? Why are the Texans so bad? So I think just based off of talent alone, experience level alone, C.J. Stroud coming into year 3 versus Cam Ward still figuring things out as a quarterback in the NFL, I don't know if I can get on board with this, but I will say divisional games are weird. Divisional games are always funky. They're always way closer than you think. I think about the Bills-Dolphins game this past week on primetime TV. That game was way closer than it had any business being. So maybe you could be onto something.
Look, it's a big spread, and I like to be daring in these, but also I do think there's an element of the Titans lost to the Broncos week 1 in a game that was close. The Titans were close for a half against the Rams. These are the consolation prizes that you have to give out teams that suck. The Titans suck. I want to say that loudly, and I think that Callahan is going to be the first coach fired in the NFL. I never root for that, but I think that that's an inevitability as this thing just comes careening off a cliff, right? I don't know that Bo Hardegree is really an offensive play caller. To your point, what's he going to do in a couple of days of practice and a walkthrough that's suddenly going to change the offense? I get all of that. It just looks so bad in some ways. And if you're the Texans, it feels like maybe you walk in with a little bit of finally, we get our get-right game. And I don't think the Texans' offensive line particularly is good enough to talk to anybody.
Fair.
So there's at least a window of opportunity. Okay, that's my
Jeffrey Simmons game, if you will.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So give me, what do you got your eye on as a thirst trap Thursday game for you?
I am very, very lucky to have some very supportive and loving people in my life that watch the show every single day. So Mom, Dad, Dylan, all of my fiance, all of the people in my life who I love very much and who are very supportive and watch this show and all graduated from the University of Tennessee, please stop watching because this is a thirst trap game. Tennessee heads to Mississippi State, and this is a thirst trap that is brewing for a couple of reasons.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
What are we doing? Heupel.
is that Nico back there in his window?
Oh, yeah.
Nico's
Look at that.
spying on Josh Heupel's thirst trap in his bathroom.
Why are so many of these coaches taking selfies too? Like, and the look of confusion from Heupel right there, like
traps.
that is definitely Heupel's looking and he's like, man, I got a little work to do. Like this picture looks like Heupel sounds like he's like, I got a little work to do on these abs. Oh, I'm trying to get there. Like that's what the thirst trap looks like.
I said D'Amico Ryans like that. I didn't even have to Photoshop that. Like that's what he looks like. Can confidently say I don't think that's what Josh Heupel looks like with his shirt off. Sorry,
right.
Josh Heupel.
I think you are correct.
But that's we had to do some imagination there. This is a thirst trap game. It's in Starkville. And I understand that Mississippi State is not the class or the elite of the SEC by any stretch of the imagination. But if you have been to that stadium, you know how deafening those cowbells are. When I watched that Arizona State Mississippi State game, I literally had to turn the volume down on my TV because the cowbells were so loud through the speakers on my television. And this is Joey Aguilar's first true road game and his first road game in the SEC. And even though it is Mississippi State, which I don't think gets credit for how difficult a place it really is, going on the road in the SEC is incredibly difficult. I don't care how much experience that you have in college football. Winning on the road and going on the road in the SEC is incredibly difficult. And Josh Heupel coached teams aren't nearly as sharp or as good on the road as they are at Neyland Stadium. Just look at that Arkansas game last year. It was a game that Tennessee had no business losing, but they did. I think the other aspect here, though, is too, Mississippi State plays a 3-3-5 defense. That's 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. So the idea of that is that you take away big-time pass plays. That's a lot of what Tennessee likes to do offensively. Look at Georgia. How were they able to run up the score against Georgia in the first half? Well, it was Joey Aguilar going deep for like 60 yards to Chris Brazzell. I don't think, in theory, at least, though the style of defense that Mississippi State wants to play or does play, you have to have the horses to execute it. But the style of defense that they play, they're going to try and take that away from Tennessee. Now, they're going to have to be really good up front to take the run away. But if Tennessee, in order for Tennessee to win this game, they're going to have to run up the score because Mississippi State also runs up the score. How much can you really, in theory, run up the score if you are run punting, which is, I think, what Mississippi State is going to want to force Tennessee into and to force them to make mistakes in a really, really loud environment. Also, Tennessee's defense is solid. They have not been as good on third down as they have been historically. So I think that's an opportunity for Mississippi State to convert on those third downs, to hold on to time of possession, and to run up the score against a Tennessee team that also likes to do that. But at home, maybe Mississippi State can do it better.
62.5 is the over-under you see right there. That is a big number because Vegas agrees with you. But here's the thing. Mom and Dad, Dylan, I can now be your favorite on the show. I never thought this is my real opportunity.
I think you already were, Fitz.
I mean, I'm just saying the Vols are winning this by double digits. I feel really confident in the messaging that Heupel gets this week out of this team because last week was to just shake it off against essentially, a community college. This week, your message all week to the team was you lost your wiggle room, right? Like this week, the message is you cannot lose another SEC game. This week, the message is the world has forgotten about us. This week, the message is think of what you've done. You backed yourself into a quarter. Now you got to fight your way out of it. These are the things that every college football, these are the isms that every college football coach is going to say. And that version of Heupel right there is going to have this team hyped. I agree with you that part of this is going to be, can they force them to run the football? I just think there's going to be big run opportunities. I think Mississippi State's going to crowd the line of scrimmage, make one man miss, and it turns into 50, 60-yard runs. I think there are big chunk plays in this game that actually come on the ground. I think there's big chunk plays in this game that come from the screen game. I think Heupel is going to basically try and put Mississippi State to sleep early on to get those long opportunities later. I think the Vols roll.
This game is either Tennessee by double digits or Mississippi State just barely ekes out a win. I don't think it's a very close Tennessee win. It's one of those two.
Yeah, well, tell Dylan to hit me up when he's celebrating on Saturday because I think the Vols are going to roll big. And, I'll never be your mom and dad's favorite, but at least you know what? We'll celebrate. We'll all celebrate together. It'll be a big family celebration. I know we'll celebrate that on Monday. Either way, either Caroline's right or we're celebrating for all the loved ones in her life. Most importantly, tomorrow we will be right here, 9 a.m. Eastern, to get you caught up on everything you need to know for the weekend. Have a great night. Thanks for watching Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. See you tomorrow.